What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Probably got one of the best guests I could probably ever have on this show. We do a lot of talking about federal prison and, pretty much who the hell gets an associate warden on? We do. So we got an associate warden on that worked at Thomson. He's worked in Pollock. He's been in some pretty dangerous places, but we're going to get into his story. DJ Whitmore, tell the people who you are, and let's talk a little bit about you.
Yeah, hey, Chad. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. Yeah, I started out my career hired on at SCI McKean. It's in Bradford, Pennsylvania in 1994. Hired on there as a correctional officer, promoted to recreational specialist, promoted from there to GED teacher, and then to supervisor of education. Spent 25 years there, and the promotion potential was kind of at a dead end there, so I decided to transfer on, and I got the supervisor of education job in 2019 down in the FCC, Pollock, Louisiana.
You worked at Pollock. What was it like for you to leave McKean and go to a place like that?
Well, you know what, Chad? I was nervous because you hear the stories coming from staff that have worked in penitentiaries and inmates that were in the penitentiary. They said, you can't get away with this, you can't get away with that. Watch out, you'll get stabbed over this. So I was nervous, but I asked some penitentiary inmates and some penitentiary staff, what are the consistencies that I need to know? They're like, you'll be fine. Just don't lie to them. Treat them with respect. If you tell them they're going to do something, just do it. And those are the three things that are staying true in any prison you work.
Well, I mean, Pollock's a dangerous place. Even the medium was kind of dangerous. Were you there when they put all the inmates in jumpsuits? Everybody had to have a jumpsuit on?
Only specific inmates, if they did something that was a particular offense, they put them in jumpsuits. But I had a great time at Pollock. I had a great department. I was over the education department, and I had some great staff. And yeah, it was a volatile, dangerous place to work, but I enjoyed my assignment there.
Let me ask you this. You're coming from, prisons in the East Coast. You've been in McKean all these years. You go down to Pollock. What was it like as far as the atmosphere and, the culture? The culture's a little different on the East Coast among staff, among prisoners, and when you get down south, right?
Yeah, so a lot at our low institutions and maybe the medium, the staff may not be as close. When you go to a penitentiary or a complex like that, I found that there was a very close niche of staff that had each other's back. Obviously, like I said, it was a violent place, and you had to have each other's back. So that was one of the things I appreciated. And then it was totally out of my culture zone or where I grew up at. It was totally different in the food, just the ethnicity, just the culture. Everything was different. But I truly enjoyed the place. The food down there is fantastic.
What was it like being a Bills fan going down there? You're from my area. We're both Bills fans. What was it like going down there and being a Bills fan?
So it's not bad at all. The reason being is NFL's not king down there. The SEC's king. And the LSU Tigers, in the year I was there, they ran up on a championship. So we had a great season while I was there, and the fans were outstanding. And they really embrace college football more than they do the NFL.
There's kind of this big cloud around Thomson. You end up making it there. We'll get into that in a second. And you end up, I think, retiring from there over some issues, and we'll talk about them in a second. But I want to kind of ask you, because you were an associate warden, because you started as security, you made it all the way up, what are some of the craziest things that you've seen, that you've experienced?
Some of the sheer violence of prison. And you spoke with it to some of your guests that you've had on here that, it's traumatic for both sides, the inmate population and also the staff that work there. It's you see some pretty bloody, nasty stuff. I remember at McKean one time responding to an emergency, and the cell that's usually white was completely red with blood. I mean, from the ceiling down to the walls, down to the sink, down to the floor. I mean, it was just a nasty, nasty scene. And something you don't forget. I still to this day, that was probably 20 years ago that I responded to that emergency. It's something you don't forget.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you that. I always wanted to ask cops, because I used to see, I was in a lot of places, a lot of violence, Big Sandy. I was in Pollock. I was in some dangerous places. And sometimes the violence is just on astronomical levels. People don't even understand what it is unless they've seen it, unless they've experienced it. And I used to see some of the cops like it didn't even affect them. It was just part of their day. And eventually I felt like it was just part of my day. It kind of blackened my heart, didn't affect me after a while. but I think it does affect me. It was just at the moment that I felt like, it don't affect me anymore until I got out of prison. Do you feel like it affects you, the things that you've seen, the things that you experience?
I think it definitely hardens you. It makes you more of a course individual. You're certainly more sense of hypervigilant when you're out in the community. You go to a restaurant, sit down at a table. You're gonna put your back against the wall. You want to see the entrance and the exits. You're really super hypervigilant when it comes to being in the public. But also, I think it just kind of makes you more coarse and hardened to the different things in society. I mean, it makes you kind of withdrawn to a degree. But the prison violence is ebbs and flows, man. It depends. If you have a good mix of old G's or old heads in the jail, you have a mix of young bucks. Sometimes, it's ebb and flow with the prison system, and you can probably attest to that too. That when it takes some good old heads to keep the balance on the young kids, and sometimes vice versa. It's just a matter of having that right balance inside your institution. I remember when Allenwood first opened up in the mid '90s, they were super violent, like crazy stuff going on there. And then for like 10 years, you didn't hear about Allenwood. Allenwood was a good laid back place as far as the penitentiary goes, and they didn't have the problem. So what changed? I think that they got consistent, they got steady, and they had good seasoned staff. And also the inmates that were coming in there said, hey, this is a good joint. We want to do the right thing.
Let me ask you a really good question that I always wondered about, and I think a lot of other people do too. There was an officer killed at USP Canaan. I'm sure you're aware of that. When that officer was killed, I ended up coming to that prison, right? Shortly after. And the tempo there was hard nose, slam these dudes' heads into the wall. Obviously an officer's killed, and I've said this before. I don't hate the cops. I think there's some nasty cops. I think there's some nasty prisoners. But when that happened, it was like everybody in Canaan became angry and nasty, and the officers became violent. Do you think that is the response, from staff? Like, yo, they killed one of ours. These guys got nothing coming.
Well, it's hard for me to comment on that situation because I don't know what the climate is at that facility. I know they had a great warden there, and the union that worked well with the administration there. And I can tell you that one of the rules is, and you know it from the convict ed, is you don't put your hands on the staff, right? One of the first things that the warden see in their is keep your hands off my staff. And for the most part, that's the rule amongst y'all, is they don't touch the staff because bad things are going to happen to the inmate population as far as being locked down. So I can't speak to that directly because I wasn't there, so I don't want to answer a question or say something that be out of character.
When that did happen, did it bother you, even though you didn't work there?
Well, it certainly is a reality check. I've been through some situations that really put a knot in your stomach and that fight or flight. I've been in a couple of times. The crack riots in 1995, we were in lockdown and we had two of our units taken over by inmates. And then we had a pretty good riot on our rec yard in 2009 at McKee. And I can tell you those situations, you can money order quarterback it all you want. It's fight or flight in that situation. I think we all have it. The inmates and the staff, an escape plan or not escape plan. I guess that's the wrong term you use in prison, but just a plan to how am I going to protect myself? How am I going to be safe in this situation? Like it's nasty right now. It's violent right now. How am I going to sustain life and keep myself alive?
You were there for the crack riots?
Yeah, it was in 1995. I hired on in 1994. We had 2 housing units taken over.
I interviewed one of the guys, Haynes. He ended up doing like 30-something years altogether. He got out on compassionate release. But I think he was one of the architects or one of the leaders. He was a Muslim of them crack riots. I know Unique Mecca Audio. I think he talks about it. What was it like for you being a new officer and these dudes are going nuts over, pretty much that black people are disproportionately sentenced under the crack laws? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I was a member of the disturbance control team at the time, and it was eye-opening. Like, holy cow, is this what my whole career is going to be like? Is fighting inmates all the time? And turns out it was. And I've only had a couple episodes in my life or my career that had to go through that situation. But I was only in about a year and 5 months when that kicked off, and I tell you what, it's a reality check there too. Like, it was difficult for sure.
So you said, you've been in some situations where you had knots in your stomach. What was the one situation that you remember where you were kind of like, wow, I'm in danger right here?
I was on the rec yard in 2009, and we could sense there was something that happened like 5 days prior in the chow hall between two groups, and we locked down for a few days, tried to gather some information to see if it was okay to come back up. The information gathered said it was okay. We got to let these guys talk it out, and then we should be good to go with bringing the prison back up. Went to the rec yard. We opened up the rec yard, allowed them to go out there to talk. Well, there was probably 200 to 250 of them out there, and it wasn't talked for very long, and it was on. I was one of 6 people in the middle of the rec yard, like when this chaos kicked off, and like it was ass and elbows, man. I was running to get the heck out of there because I didn't want any part of it. And like I said, it was fight or flight, man.
Fight or flight. Eventually, your career takes you to USP Thomson, right?
I had one step in between. I had one step. I went to FCI Latuna. I got my associate warden job there.
How was it there? Laid back?
That was a great facility. It's a low security facility. It's been open for 91 years now. It was 90 years while I was there. Staff are seasoned, great staff, great facility. Can't speak enough of that place. I totally, truly enjoyed that assignment. Lived right on reservation grounds. He had staff housing. Truly enjoyed it. The staff were professional. A low institution. I think while I was there 18 months, we only had one use of force. I mean, it was very nice. Good place to cut your teeth as an associate warden.
And then they move you up to the big leagues. You go to the prison that everybody's talking about, or they were talking about, just a few months ago. Do they end up closing the SMOO program over there, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that was an assignment that I had to really think about. I didn't have as an assignment that I would want to go to. So when I was called and said, "Would you come to Thomson?" I said, I need to speak to my family. I need to talk to my loved ones, and I need to reach out to some of the people I respect in the agency just to get their feel on this place. I'd seen the stories just like everybody else. I'd watched the news, I'd watched the media, and it was just a lot of negative stuff coming out of Thomson. So I was late in my career. It wasn't sure if that's the spot that I wanted to go to. So what I did was I called, made some phone calls, talked to my wife, talked to my kids, and decided this could be a make or break assignment. And if I go there, I could have a chance to become warden in the agency. So I told those folks that were asking if I would come there that I would, and I accepted the assignment.
You think that was a mistake now, in hindsight?
You know what, Chad? I think everything happens for a reason. I think that, there was some reason that I was drawn there and some good to come out of that. I hope eventually, and I hope this is what the good that's going to come out of that is that exposing the negative side of prison and moving forward in a positive direction.
I know you did an interview with NPR. I listened to some of that. I think that was NPR. Read some of the material. You walk into Thomson, there's a lot of crazy things going on. Inmates are approaching you, and they're telling you, hey, look, man, people are being handcuffed, left in feces, they're being beat on, and you kind of take that serious, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you ask anybody that knows me, my career, they know that I was about doing the right thing. It's about doing the right thing. And I know you've had some folks on here that said that they weren't always about that. Well, that's not me. I'm always going to do the right thing. I'm going to follow the rules. That's what we're supposed to do. And it keeps you out of the funny papers. And so when I got there, the warden, Thomas Bergami, he was there 2 months before me. And he called me several times in his couple months prior to me getting there, tell me, get ready, fasten your seatbelt. This place is fast paced. There's a lot happening. It's a tough place. Get ready. It's a tough assignment. And I said, well, boss, I'll take care of you. We'll get there and we'll do it together. And he was absolutely right. It was just a beast of an assignment. Yeah, there was a lot of bad things going on there. You read the articles, the media, the Marshall Project highlighted it in their letter or that article that they wrote, that there was 5 homicides there, and I think 2 suicides within a short period of time, maybe 12 months to 18 months. So it had a very, very bad reputation. And I felt like going there, okay, we need to change the pace. They need to change the pace. They want some staff in there that they feel could come in and make things better. And so I took the assignment thinking that. And part of me was, I think, disillusioned now that we didn't have the backing from the regional staff and even the central office staff.
I feel like the staff sometimes throw guys like you in the fire and let you be the reason.
Well, what happened there is we had a very contentious relationship with the union. There was a union president named John Zumker there that was very difficult to work with. Matter of fact, when the warden got there, he told Warden Bergami, we're equal. He was a GS9 counselor. Yeah, he's a counselor assigned to a unit to do counselor work for the inmates, do bed assignments, do their visiting list, do their phone list, that kind of stuff, hand out the BP9s. And he told the warden that I'm the same as you. I'm the union president. You're the warden. All decisions we need to talk about privately. And Warden Bergami wasn't for that. He said, no, that's not how it works. We will certainly include you in the partnership. We'll include you in the conversation. And we'll make some decisions possibly together. But decisions about running this facility fall on me, because at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to be responsible for answering if there's a homicide on my watch, if there's a suicide on my watch. I'm the one that's going to be answering to that. So right from the get-go, it was contentious. It was not a good environment to be in. And unfortunately, for us, we can't respond. He went to the media constantly. Fire Bergami. He told lies. Ted said that we had an escape at our camp. And you know about camps. There's things called walkaway. Well, it wasn't even a walkaway. It was some campers that were caught out of bounds, coming back in from off the property, on the property, not constituted as an escape. He went to the media, cried wolf, created a stir in the community there where some of the chief of police and some of the agencies there, the cities there, reached out to us and said, hey, what do you got going on there? My constituents or the people in my community are concerned. They're calling the station. Is there, do we lock all our doors? Do we need to get our firearms out? That kind of stuff. He panicked the community over misinformation. And he constantly did that. And the unfortunate thing, Chad, is we couldn't respond. We wanted so much so to reach out. We have a public information officer that works at the institution, but we would send it up to regional level and then the central office level to ask if we could make a statement on this to correct it. And we were always told no.
I read some allegations in there, and I've experienced this on all different ends, right? I've never been physically assaulted by a cop, but there were some allegations that white cops were handcuffing black prisoners at Thomson and kind of beating them up, right?
Yeah, there was all kinds of allegations when we got there. There was something called the Thomson tattoo, and a lot of inmates did show me that they had scarring on their wrists, scarring on their ankles from the leg irons. Yeah, they had scarring. And that was one of the things that we tried to correct. So one of the things that is highlighted in the NPR article and also on the radio show is that Warden Bergami, it's not my policy to do cameras, have it recorded on your 2-hour checks. So if a guy's in ambulatory restraints or he's in 4-point restraints, every 2 hours, the lieutenant has to go in and do a restraint check the restraints, make sure circulation's not cut off. Well, there was all kinds of allegations that staff were misusing inmates or abusing them, and also tightening the restraints during the checks, doing things to the inmates, allowing them to lay in their feces and their waste. So Warden Bergami instituted, so guess what? From here on out, we're going to start videotaping. And the staff balked, said, "Oh my God, you're trying to get us. You're trying to, get a case against us." He's like, "No, I'm trying to protect you." You know what? When they make that allegation, and we do have to look into it, we have the video proof, the evidence right there that you didn't do anything wrong, and that this case isn't sustained, and we'll get it out. But they thought differently, and part of that was the culture of the union. They didn't like Bergami, and of course they didn't like me then, because I aligned with Warden Bergami.
Let me say this, because look, I've worked various jobs in the prison. I've heard staff members talk, in the captain's office, where it's like the cops, they hate some of the wards. They're like, he's a hug-a-thug. And I mean, have you heard of that before?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You have wardens that, I always had this mantra when I had in my bureau career, was firm, fair, and consistent. I think if you're firm, fair, and consistent across the board, you'll have an easy time in prison. But there is some folks that are really hard, right? They're hardcore. They go hard every day. They're very sticklers for every little rule. And then there's some that are really soft and let sometimes people get away with too much. And then there's those folks right in the middle. I think that's what the balance needs to be, right in the middle. And I really don't think you get that balance till about that 3 to 5 year mark in your career, because you've got experiences. It isn't, you come into prison, you're not going to know everything. And dealing with people and reading people is a craft. And you kind of hone that in. I think it takes about 3 to 5 years. And then some people get really, really good at it.
You know, I've seen staff, and I feel like there's a culture, not all, but I'm going to shoot straight with you. It's real and it's raw. I think there's a culture in the Bureau of Prisons where a lot of the staff, a large majority of them, dislike inmates. They dislike prisoners. Like, he's an inmate, and they're disconnected. Nothing's personal, right? As far as like, oh, he's a nice guy and all of that. Do you feel like there's a culture in the Bureau where they dislike prisoners just off the rip? Like, I just dislike them.
Well, I'll say this to that, is that we're indoctrinated from all of our training and the things that we go through to not trust you. So what happens is the first time you get lied to, or the first time that someone does to you something to your door or something during the shift, it used to be back in the day, they'd take pencils and jam your lock with the pencil. They put feces on the door handles. So it certainly, as we talked before, it hardens you a little bit, maybe makes you have an attitude or opinion towards the inmate population. But just like you said, not all the cops are bad. And that's I think, a great percentage. We got great staff in Bureau of Prisons. But there is a certain population that probably will never like inmates and dislike you from the rip. But there is going to be, I think, the majority of staff that they want to believe in humanity. They want to believe that you're going to do the right thing. And I think that's just like the inmate population. I think there's a high percentage, probably 85 to 90%, that want to do the right thing. They just want to do their time. Then there's that 10 to 15% of the frequent flyers of which stirring up problems. I think one of your guests said it the other night. Yeah, it was most of the guys just want to do their time and go home and see their loved ones. And there's these other guys, and then you get caught up in something because that 10 to 15% that's nefarious and want to do bad things sucks some other guys into that, especially in the penitentiaries. I've seen that really, really extreme in the penitentiary, where the cars, they just run everything. And unfortunately, those young bucks that are just coming to the prison system, that's what they got to put work in. And programming isn't a priority in some of the cars. Like, come and get their GED. That's one of the things I'd like to highlight too, is down at Pollock and the great staff that I work with down there. We'd never met our goal for GED down there in the penitentiary on computer-based testing. And in 2020, we hit our goal of 5 guys getting their GEDs. I know it's a low number, but penitentiary, a lot of guys don't take programming seriously, and 5 guys got their GEDs, and I'm super proud of that.
I taught a fast-track GED class when I went to Raybrook. The teacher had the same guys in the class for 2 years. We did it. 87 days, all of our students got their GED, me and Cedric Dean, and they fired us right after that. But because it was like, we had a teacher in there that was on her phone. She's not supposed to have her phone in there. She's not teaching anything. But there are some guys that care. There are people, and I know that you were a guy that was, because I've asked about you from other people that know you. Adam Clausen, very good friend of mine. And I'm like, what kind of guy is this guy? And he said, there was a point in his life where he was hard. He was by the book. Don't expect, he'll be consistent. And I respect that. Be consistent. Don't be one way today and one way tomorrow, because then I'm like, that dude's an idiot. And then he said, you really kind of like focused on education and people turning their lives around. I think, in fact, you brought him down to Thomson, I think, to speak after he got out. So I know that you actually do care. And people should care, because you don't need to waste tax dollars on over-incarcerating people. Let me ask you this, right? Because we never get a straight answer. Whenever we bring a BOP employee on, we never get a straight answer, a former BOP employee. You ever have to, as a supervisor, you ever have to get in on your staff, like, hey, because they assaulted a prisoner, because they bounced someone off the wall?
Never when I was a supervisor. And I just want to maybe say that was the way I ran my department, that we're not going to put hands on guys. Listen, your best offense and defense in prison is your communication skills. And that goes both ways. you got to be an effective communicator. If you can't communicate, you're going to have problems. So I always encourage my staff, communicate first. And if they had issues, you know what? They're strength in numbers. Hey, call a buddy, call your friend. You know, if you're having trouble with a situation, that's why your teammates there. That's why your coworkers there. But never had to.
And a warden in USP Lee, Warden O'Brien, best warden I ever seen the whole 20 years I was in prison. And Captain Wilson, who I think Wilson went on to be a warden somewhere. But he was kind of a no-nonsense guy. If you had it coming, you got it. You know, this guy would walk on the yard in the penitentiary with nobody with him, guy out there selling sodas, happened to be me one day. And he says, give me a Pepsi. And I'm like, I said, give me a Pepsi. He takes out his handkerchief, wipes it off, and he drinks a Pepsi, right? This is a guy that you had to respect. We didn't have late nights in the penitentiary. Monday Night Football, he gave us late nights. He allowed you to earn things. There were some incentives. And he ran his prison how he wanted to run it. And you know what? It was probably one of the best penitentiaries you could ever be in at that time. USP Lee, there was some violence, there were some murders, but you know what? It was pretty much laid back. You got killed at USP Lee if you were looking for it. You didn't just blatantly get, over $10, someone's going to kill you. And I've seen that happen in other places. I think he was a great warden. I think he was a good man. And I think that, they sent him over to Hazleton to try to fix Hazleton after Lee. So there are good guys. He was big on education. He was big on hate, and he stopped me on the walkway. I hope you get out someday. Hope you turn your life around. I see you're doing good. And he would stop guys. He'd go into, GED class and get on his knees next to a table and help people out. I've seen Warden Langford do that. I think you were that kind of guy, from what I hear.
Yeah, I can speak to that. There was you're right. There was a time in my career that probably had a different view. Remember, I said 3 to 5 years to kind of get the feel of who you are, and going to rec from custody side, correctional officer to recreation, job changes, philosophy changes, and now I'm providing a service. Right, you're doing intramural intramural leagues, tournaments. You're doing events. You're running wellness classes. Now your roles change. And then it really changed when I got down to education and became a GED teacher. And I had an aha moment. Like, I can really make a difference here. I can get a difference in men's lives and help them to, better themselves so they don't have to go back to a life of crime. They can improve themselves. And I remember as a teacher one night, working late night, and there was Clausen and 4 or 5 other inmates come and said, hey, will you sponsor our group? And I was like, what's your group? They said, well, we're doing a reentry. I'm like, nah, it's not for me. I got a pretty good reputation with the staff here. I don't need some inmate program that's going to fail and my name's all over it. And then the staff looked down at me like, oh, see, there you go, doing that hug thug stuff. And it backfires. They're like, no, this is something way different. We've got a philosophy on using the coach approach. We're all getting certified as life coaches. We're going to do a program that's facilitator based. We're going to focus on the leadership of this prison, meaning the community itself, targeting those high profile, high level guys to say, hey, listen, we want you to be a part of this program. We want you to better our community. So if we can get everybody's buy-in, and it was fantastic. Like, listen, about the 5 to 10 guys that were involved, like from the get-go, are out now, and they're doing fantastic. Like Adam Clausen for one of them. He's doing fantastic. And I'm proud of them guys. But it was that moment of taking a chance to say, you know what? Do I put my name on this? Because I was well respected by the other staff that I worked with at McKean. What if it was a call for assistance or emergency? I was the first one there, or one of the first ones there. So I had a great deal of respect from the other staff. And I knew putting myself out there was going to was going to be a hard situation. Yeah, and I did it, and I'm thankful that I did, because we did some amazing things. I carved out some space and education for them to do some life coaching events. We did reentry events, reentry summits. We had all kinds of guests come in, federal judges come in, U.S. prosecutors, U.S. probation, you name it. They came into the institution. Sometimes we'd have over 100, 150 people in our gymnasium in the reentry events. So we did just some amazing things that I'm super proud of. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the leadership of Warden Reckingwald. She was the warden at the time. And then some of the other staff that were at McKean, and then also the reentry affairs coordinator and myself, all aligning and working together to try to accomplish a goal.
Let's talk a little more about Thomson. You're in Thomson. Any murders while you're there?
No, that's one thing that we can tout and hold and hang our hat on. Warden Regami, myself, and the rest of the executive staff there. We had no homicides, and there was one inmate death while we were there, and it was labeled a suicide, but it was more of an overdose situation. The guy was binging for like 3 days. There was just say that rounds were made appropriately, and the guy ended up dying. So, unfortunately, under our watch, we did have one death, but nothing to the extreme of 5 homicides and 2 suicides. So, no. So, one of the things that I can say that we did well was keep that place safe for the staff and the inmates, because we didn't have any serious staff assaults either.
You talk about an overdose. A lot of guys are having stuff sprayed on paper. It's coming in. Some people say it's actually Raid and bug spray. Is that what they're overdosing on? Is that what they're getting high on?
This was a situation of carry, like self-carry pills that they would get from the pharmacy, from our pharmacy. So they had a certain amount of self-carry pills that they were allowed to carry. And Warden Regami, as soon as this happened, we cut that down to, a certain amount of days down to a lower number of days. So yeah, it made more work on the pharmacy because these guys were showing up the window more to get their prescription filled. But he had a celly or somebody on the reams that had another, and they combined these 2 pills, and that's what he ended up, my understanding, taking.
You ever have a prisoner brutally assaulted or even killed, and you go home at night and you're like, damn, man, I kind of feel bad for that guy. Or you had to call the mother and say, we're sorry, but your son died here at our prison. You ever had to go home and feel bad for somebody?
Yeah, that if you care about mankind and human nature and humanity, of course you're gonna feel for that. I remember at Pollock, I was acting associate warden, and it was a homicide. I didn't have to make the phone calls, but I certainly had to do. Matter of fact, there was a suicide when I was acting AW. Had to do the reconstruction, so they come back in and they review tape, and it's a difficult situation. And then you think of how tragic it is when the way the guy dies, just how tragic it is and how fragile life is.
You weren't down there at Pollock when the 2 DC dudes were murdered, right? Mario was one of them, and like 30 years in.
No, I was in Pollock from 2019 to 2021. I was about 19 months there.
You know what? I think he might have been murdered at the penitentiary right after you left, shortly thereafter.
So there was something that happened down there after I left. It was a series of serious assaults, and deaths after I left.
As an associate warden, how do you fix that stuff?
Good question. I don't know. I think that it's honestly a collaboration with guys like you. We're in a penitentiary. Adam Foss was in the penitentiary. How do we make these penitentiaries better? We know they're car driven, right? Oftentimes when something happens, they get the cars together and then they say, I remember in Pollock, our rec cages were separated. If you went on Charlie, if you were Charlie, you went to Charlie Yard. If you were on Bravo, you went to Bravo Yard. If you were on Elpa, you went to Elpa Yard. And we'd let guys talk through the grills, basically, or through the fences to one another to try to work things out. Now, is that the right way? I don't know, but we certainly need to make our penitentiary safer for the staff and the inmates, because it seemed like at the end, inmates liked being locked up because it was safer on lockdown. You didn't have to worry about coming out of your cell. You didn't have to worry about going to chow. You didn't have to worry about going to commissary and getting stuck.
Sometimes as a prisoner, you have to weigh those things, because I liked when we had a 5 count. I could get some rest at Big Sandy when we had a 5 count. And, sometimes like, man, he's locked down suck, but I would go back to, well, got through 30 more days being safe, might be close to getting to an FCI. Got, you got good conduct because you ain't been out. It's kind of like you damn if you do, damn if you don't. But yeah, do I know how to fix the BOP? I'll tell you what, I bet you I do, but they would never listen. I think that you give incentives, man. People have to be able to earn things that they can enjoy, like their free time. And I say this, hey, look, you get a 20-year sentence. You want to come in here, you want to be a gang member, you want to be a drug dealer, we got a place for you. We'll send you over to Big Sandy. Or you can take that 20-year sentence and you can earn your way out of prison. You can get out of here in about 7-8 years. First 2 years, we're going to get your GED. Next 2 years, we're going to get you a college degree. Next 2 years, we're going to get you a trade. you're going to walk out of here with some tools. Maybe the first year you get some character education, because I think that's one of the major components. You see some of these state prisons, like in Oklahoma, where they allow them to order KFC once a month. You know, like these dudes are like, damn, man, we don't want to lose that. Like, we like that. And there is a mindset in federal prison. Like, I talk to people all the time. Donnie LaFont, he's the guy that killed the guy down in Atlanta. I talked to Donnie. You know, there's guys, some guys are just like, yo, this is my life. And I remember talking to this dude, Joe Stevens, a SAC gang member. And he's like, and it was when Obama was running for president. He's like, man, our world's over with. He's about to be our president. He said, I don't care if I ever get out of here. And I'm like, damn, dude, you got 9 years and you don't care? I often speak about Adam Oliveri. And I used to tell Adam back then when we were selling, he's like, bro, you got to figure out a way to get out of here, bro. You're living prison life like you gave up after you lost your appeal. He's like, dude, this is it. This is my life. And he ends up stabbing the cop in Big Sandy. And you know what? Today he calls me and says, I need help with a compassionate release. I turned my life around, Chad, about 10 years ago. Well, it's a little too late after you stab the cop, you know, but I tried to tell you this 20 years ago. And now you're in a catch-22. So I think that there should be incentives. I do also think that there should be cameras on staff so that people are accountable. You got cameras on cops, street cops, make everybody accountable, right? Because you know, like I know, there's some dirty cops in there. They'll go just trash your locker, especially in the lower securities. Someone don't like you. SIS, I had my compassionate release stuff going on. SIS dude came and testified on me. Like, are you serious? And he lied. And the judge said that he lied in his decision. But you ordered this black lady to go search my cell and she destroyed it. Pictures everywhere. Like, it all came out at the hearing. You know, you don't do shit like that. But like I said, not all staff were bad. So really kind of at Thomson, I kind of want to talk about that before we, you know, we close up, and about your career there and what happens there, and, you know, why, you know, people are kind of, I've read the reports. So people are kind of targeting you. They don't like you because you're making them do their job the way that it's supposed to be done. They don't like you because you're not allowing them to handcuff prisoners and beat them up. You know, you're the warden, like, hey, you know, we can't do this. This is a felony. Or, you know, they, if they allowed it, they could end up like the 2 officers or 3 officers, including a lieutenant, that just got sentenced from Big Sandy for beating up prisoners. Are all prisoners nice guys? Or, you know, am I like, hey, I've been around some real nasty people that were prisoners. And you know what? Some people might get mad, but there's been people in prison where I want to bounce their head off the wall. So I know that the cops want to bounce their head off the wall when they shit them down. There are repercussions, and we live in a different world. But a little bit more on Thomson. I mean, they were kind of targeting you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They, you know, I believe in doing the right thing and holding people accountable. And probably saw in the article and the report about just wearing their uniform. We couldn't get staff to wear their uniform. And we were, you know, we couldn't get the staff to. Now, let me just preface that by saying, during COVID, the BOP got lax on uniform. Okay. COVID was over when I was there. Now we're transitioning.
So, you know, there's been a bunch of stuff about the abuse at Thomson, and that's, you know, kind of, I think, why the SMU and everything kind of got dissolved there, and just a bunch of issues there. You know, what was going on with the abuse with, you know, people calling the warden and, you know, all the restraints that were going on? Kind of give us an idea into that.
Yeah. So, like I said, there were 5 homicides and 2 suicides there in a short period. So we went in to evaluate and see what we can do to improve it. And one of the things the warden said to do was start videotaping the 2-hour checks. And one of the things he noticed is, like, guys that were in 4-point restraints, they would say, you know, maybe on the 8-hour check, you know, that every 2 hours in increments, and then say 8 hours, the guy said, I need to use the restroom, or I've got to, you know, use the bathroom. So they would transition him up to ambulatory restraints and let him use the restroom. And then the team would put him back down in 4-point, and the warden would say, why are you putting him back in 4-point? Well, because he was in 4-point. I know, but 4-point is a control method only used in the most extreme cases where you need the guy doesn't have self-control. He's going to be harm or hurt himself, or hurt or harm staff. He said, yeah, but he was in 4-point. Yeah, but he just showed you a pattern of calm behavior by following your directives, following your orders. You put him transition to ambulatory. Now let him use the restroom. He was respectful. He didn't disobey your orders. So why would we keep him in ambulatory to see if we can progress them out? And those are some of the things that Ward Bergami and myself identified that we can improve on. And that would also improve with the inmate as far as the climate of the inmate on their treatment. Also, many a times we noticed in our review of film that after use of force, we would take the staff would take the inmates over to the hospital for a medical evaluation. And you know the little booties that your contractor puts on to come in your house over their boots so they don't track? Well, they would put the inmates in these little booties and walk them out in 0-degree temperatures of snow and rain and walk them across the compound. And we're like, no, I mean, these are human right violations. You can't do this stuff. And it was just mind blowing the things that were going on there. And then,
I think that goes back to what I was talking about, the culture where they're just like, who cares? They're inmates.
oh, you're absolutely right. And this, like I said, this was a very, very, very tough assignment. First and foremost, the director, Peters herself, in testifying to the Senate Judiciary Committee, she admitted it is the worst place she's seen in her 30 plus years of corrections or law enforcement. Warden Bergami and myself say it too. It was the worst place in the 30-year career that I had. It was just a culture that we're going to do what we want to do. Now there was some good folks there. You can't say not an indictment of the whole institution. There was some good folks, but there was a large population or a large amount of staff that didn't want authority. They didn't want to hear somebody over their shoulder saying to do the right thing.
Some of the staff think that just because
the union president, he was beating that drum. This is a guy, this union president, who
I want to stop you for a second because I want to ask you something. Because I read some of the stuff, right? I mean, I kind of gathered an opinion. Union president, white guy, black guy, Hispanic, tell the people.
Not that it matters what he is, but he was a Caucasian guy.
He was a Caucasian guy, but he was kind of, and I asked you that I know that he's Caucasian, but I asked you that for a reason because, when you read some of the stuff, it's kind of like he was like you said earlier, hey, I'm the boss. I don't care if you're the warden. I'm the boss, and we're going to run this place the way we want to run it because we're security, right?
Yeah, there was totally a mindset that, and I also think that there was a climate, or that the way they're going to run it started with that tone right there from the union president, constantly going to the media and saying, basically undermining the authority of the executive staff at that institution, who had the good intended for that institution to improve it and make it better.
You see some wild things in there of staff and prisoners. That union president kind of wasn't there something about fraud or something with this guy?
Well, there was a lot to this guy, but one of the things is most institutions will have agreements on what the union, as far as official time goes, and each union or each institution has their own union. And this one, well, I'll give you an example. At Pollock, they had a memorandum of understanding with the management at that facility that the executive board of the union would be on 100% official time. So there was already an agreement in place. So when I got to Thomson, this union president is constantly on official time, never doing his job. Like I said, he's a GS9 counselor, supposed to be doing services for inmates, correct? And you remember those, right? Get your visiting list together, helping you with reentry, teaching some reentry classes, making sure the bed assignments are correct in the unit, hiring unit orderlies. Those are the job of the unit counselor. And he never once performed his duties while I was there. Not once. And we tried to hold him accountable. We tried writing him up. We tried to, I even felt bad for the unit staff that had to cover his shift or cover his workload. I mean, that had to have been frustrating for those people. But I think that if you speak out against the union president, that you're going to have bad things happen to you.
Kind of like an oxymoron. Like, you guys are the boss and he's not listening. What the hell can you do when I'm the boss? I'm telling you what to do and you can't achieve anything.
Well, we did try to do stuff to him. And oftentimes, Mr. Matabosi, the regional director, would tell us to leave him alone. Oh, just let him be. Oh, don't hold him accountable on that. And I'm like, wait a minute. If there's no agreement for official time, his two vice presidents, this is the most unique thing I've ever seen, had two vice presidents there. And his two vice presidents when something wouldn't really go John's way, that was his first name, John Zumker. When it wouldn't go John's way, they would kid and say, he's just going to call Uncle Andy Matavosian, the regional director, and Bergami's going to get overruled. So we'll just call Andy. Uncle Andy will get notified. And that's how it worked there. So we were in a no-win situation.
The good old boy system. You guys are not from this area. You guys are coming in here as wardens. We live over here, and this is our place. I've seen it in Raybrook.
Yeah. And one time the union president, he called my counterpart and said, hey, I understand it's commemorating, it was in January of this year right here, 2023. He said, I understand that you're commemorating Black History Month, but my constituents, quite a few of them are complaining that you hanged a banner in the front lobby commemorating it. You need to take that down and put it in the hallway where it belongs. And my counterpart said, absolutely not. That screams of racism. And we're here to celebrate the diversity of our workforce. And that just speaks to the culture there at USP Thomson. I mean, it's sad. It's sad that it was that way.
Was the union president from that area?
No, actually, he's from California originally. Worked at a couple of joints out in California and then made his way to USP Thomson. And he lies to the staff all the time. He just absolutely lies. So, like, one of the lies he told them constantly was, "The SHMU is not going away. We will keep the SHMU." This was even after, the regional director, the deputy director visited our facility and realized that it was just, it wasn't working. And then Senator Durbin's office was there several times, and he would tell people this at different trainings and recalls. We're not losing that. We're going to keep our 25%, which is a retention bonus or retention incentive for the staff to stay there. Well, that's going away now too. So he's constantly telling lies to this base, to these constituents up there. And he touts a very high enrollment into the union. It was like 97% in the shop. But he lies to them constantly. Like right there are two examples of lies. He said the SHMU wasn't going away, and he told staff that on numerous occasions, and it did. The other lie that he told that they were going to keep their 25%. And I just recently checked some local media out of there, and looks like they're losing their 25%. So I hate to see that to the staff there, but you don't make promises that you can't keep.
Union president still over there?
Oh, I believe so. Yeah, I believe he's still there.
And you retire from there.
You know what? I left because I wasn't getting supported from the regional staff or central office staff, even though that in Director Peters' testimony to Congress that she said that, we want to root out the bad staff. We tried firing 3 staff while we were there. That it's the employment branch that makes the recommendation. It isn't the warden. The warden gets the recommendation from the employment branch. It says termination is recommended. And the warden supports termination. He says, I'm going to terminate you. And the regional director reinstated these folks every time.
I was just at a rewriting the sentencing summit in D.C. and, everybody that spoke there, former judges, current federal judges, prosecutors, the pardon attorney, who I think is a phenomenal woman, Elizabeth Oyer, everybody spoke, and they would talk to the people that were there. The only person that did not, she talked about bad staff and infrastructure. She talked about all the bullshit. She is the only person that did not stick around and have a conversation with the people that were there. She was in and out. They whisked her away like it was the president, like it was Biden walking through the back gate after the press conference. See you later. We're out of here. And I was sitting right next to, I think it was Molly Gill from FAM, Families Against Mandatory Minimums. She actually was sitting next to me, and I looked at her and I said, she's a liar. And Molly kind of looks at me, and I didn't know that she just took a job and that she's leaving FAM to go to the Bureau to work on policy. And she just kind of looked at me, and she goes, are you Chad Marks? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting next to you. And I'm like, and I look at her name tag, don't have my glasses on. I squint at her. I'm like, oh, you're Molly. Ain't that something? But, people don't want to address the reality. And there's a lot of things, from prisoners' perspectives where, hey, we can talk about the infrastructure all we want. But let's talk more about, incentives. Let's talk more about the staff. Let's talk more about, prisoners that are absolutely nuts. There's a thing going on right now, and I'm going to interview the parents. And we're helping represent me and a couple lawyers I'm associated with, a guy that was just murdered in Alabama. It's been all over Fox News, CNN. I don't know if you've seen it. but brutally assaulted, sexually assaulted, and murdered. And the guy that did that 3 weeks ago or a month ago at this prison, he's back on the compound today, and he's walking around. He's back on the compound. He murdered the guy at that prison, and he's back walking around. The Bureau's not that bad, but the Bureau is. There are a lot of bad things in the Bureau, from holes in the wall to the way people are treated. But it's on both sides. Got some nasty prisoners in there. I'm not going to pretend that we don't. Hey, if I was a staff member there and you sit me down, I probably wouldn't have a job anymore. Just going to be honest with you. And I may very well be in jail if someone threw shit on me. But, that's my perspective. But yeah, they got that culture, it seems like that racist culture down there. Good old boys, and we're going to do what we want to do and screw these people. We're security. And you always hear that from staff, like the COs, and screw the warden. We're security. And it seems like that union president was that type of guy.
Yeah, and I could say that I know that it came up in the article and also the radio show about the 205s, which are either exposing yourself or masturbating to a staff member. And I can tell you that range, they were segregated onto a certain range for this behavior. Even before the incident report was handled by the DHO and either was found guilty or not guilty, they would be set to this tier or this range, and the whole range was predominantly black. And that speaks that. As a matter of fact, I can tell you one story or one question that a staff member asked me there. He said, "When did we stop putting guys?" So when a guy's in ambulatory restraint, they can still get to their junk, right? Like they're cuffed in the front, they can still get to the junk. That's the reason behind ambulatory restraints. You got your leg guards on, you got 3 ambulatory. You can still use the restroom, you still bend down and get a drink of water. Well, apparently there was a staff member that wrote a new made up for masturbating to them while they were in ambulatory restraint. And I had a staff member say to me, "When did we get out of the habit of not putting these guys in 4-point when they do that when they're in ambulatory?" I said, Are you really asking me that question? Like, you're not the judge. It's not a punitive thing. Put a person in 4-point as a control method. If the person is going to harm themselves or is a threat to kill themselves or harm or kill a staff member, that's when we use 4-point restraint. You cannot put somebody in 4-point restraints because they masturbated. You write the incident report, you let the due process handle the case. I just couldn't believe that someone asked me that question there, but that speaks to the growing that institution needs to have, because it's been open since 2019, I believe, 18 or 19. The feds bought it in 2012, opened up in 18 or 19 to the SHLU, and we had a general population side, which was the the reintegration unit. And I think they just needed to first get an identity and then put some good productive years underneath their belt, meaning good, consistent, fair and consistent correctional practices. And I think that place could improve. But until that happens, I don't know if there's going to be improvement there.
Let me ask you one last question before we get ready to go, and then I'll let you, speak on anything that you want to add. Maybe I should have asked you this outside of this, but there's a lot of prisoners, and I deal with a lot of people. A lot of people don't realize that food is comfort in prison. Guys are stealing out of the kitchen so they can eat peppers, onions, hustling. Food is a big thing in prison, right? It's a comfort. Why did they take the microwaves out of the Federal Bureau of Prisons?
That's a good question. I think it was was a safety issue, because I know they were getting used about 24/7, because usually typically lock in at the end of the night, you lock in the morning. So, but that time in the morning when the cells are racked open at 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, depending on what your count is in your institution, those microwaves were running nonstop. I think more than anything was a safety issue. And I know that it was used a couple times for heating up baby oil and inmates having it thrown on them and then causing burning of the face and facial area.
Now that they took the microwaves away, people are making stingers. They're boiling oil in their room, boiling water. I mean, it just created a bigger problem by taking the microwaves. People are cooking on their beds. You're dying of smoke because some guy's frying eggs on his bed with like toilet paper rolls. So it's just a crazy question that I wanted to ask you, a personal question. So anyway, before we get ready to go, anything you want to say?
No, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. I really enjoyed this interview. I think that you did a great job of asking me some very fair and reasonable questions that hopefully provided you with some understanding from the staff side as far as an executive staff member's point of view. And I just want to highlight the great staff out there in the Bureau of Prisons. There's a lot of folks doing a really difficult job and really hard assignments that are good staff doing the right thing. So I want to highlight them and champion them.
Not an easy job, not an easy environment for anybody. But I definitely appreciate you coming on. From the articles that I've read and some of the things that I've heard, the Marshall Project, that union president is exactly the dude that I'm talking about. That probably shouldn't be working in the Bureau of Prisons. So I just want to add that. I think that he's just from what I've read, I think he's the type of guy that would handcuff you and punch you in the back of the head. And I'm telling you that from a prisoner's perspective. But anyway, I thank you for coming on. Glad you're a Bills fan, even though we're struggling. And I appreciate your insight and you just talking about kind of freely, about the things that you've seen, things that you experienced. Like I said, not an easy job, but I definitely appreciate you. I'm going to tell people, if you like what we're doing, hit that like button with respect. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.